If there's any company right now that is currently in flames but continues to gaslight its fans into believing it is in fact not in flames, it's probably Ubisoft. I've covered this company a lot. They got more leaks than pretty much any other company that I've covered on this channel. I broke all kinds of stories on these people. Now there's even more bad things happening with them, and one of my sources told me some behind the scenes stuff too as well. To start, Assassin's Creed Shadows was touted to be this savior of Ubisoft. Every single journalist website tried to gaslight you into believing that this game would save that company. They used targeted language like saying that Shadows hit 3 million players, but not actually telling you the sales numbers of actual copies sold, because the real numbers were in fact far worse than even I or anyone else really could predict. So recently, ENDYMIOnTv, I think that's what it's called, but as you can see here on screen, is a website where users are able to track all kinds of data regarding games and more. You can even find out the exact amount of copies sold per platform for most games. Anyway, this website had information on Shadows. However, since then, that information has actually been scrubbed by the website, likely in a panic because it was exposing just how poorly Ubisoft was actually doing behind the scenes. Thankfully though, the internet was way faster and we did get the raw numbers either way, so joke's on you, Ubisoft. But I'm still gonna tell people now the things you don't want them knowing. So, we were told that Shadows was the second biggest launch for Assassin's Creed as a branch, whatever, across the board. Valhalla was number one, obviously, which was lightning in a bottle because Valhalla launched alongside the PS5 and it came out during COVID, which was the perfect conditions for people to play such a long game like that. But with Shadows, it's actually far bleaker than you would expect. Ubisoft announced within 3 days that Shadows hit 3 million players, but those numbers were largely inflated by people who paid the $20 or less price to play Shadows via Ubisoft's subscription service. They used that to make themselves seem more successful. Actual numbers? Well, on PS5, which was the leading platform for Shadows, the game sold a combined total of 1.7 million copies as of this video going live. That is genuinely abysmal, guys, for a game that took over 5 years to make and had multiple studios plus outsourcing involved to help create it. So like I said, that was the leading platform, so it gets worse from here. Second place is Steam. Guess, what do you think it made, huh? Maybe 1 million? Nah, dude. Steam sold a combined total of, get this, 367,000 copies of Shadows via their storefront alone. That's right, you heard that, my god. 367,000 copies of Shadows was all Ubisoft could muster in total on Steam. A platform with well over tens of millions of players and then some. And then the Xbox numbers? Those couldn't even be calculated by this analytic website because according to them, the actual amount of sales on Xbox were so abysmally small that it barely even quantified on their spreadsheets. Which doesn't surprise me at all considering that most Xbox players do just, use Game Pass anyways. And Shadows obviously didn't launch on that, so there was really no way that they were going to buy a game for full price over there. But in total, this means that roughly Assassin's Creed Shadows sold just a little over 2 million units since March, which obviously this video is coming out in May, so that is a massive flop. And a terrible performance for what is arguably Ubisoft's biggest franchise in their company's hat, and now that we know this thanks to ENDYMIOnTv, it's no wonder that Ubisoft had to sell part of themselves to China's Tencent to save the company from complete financial oblivion. As I was told by sources, the general idea here is that starting this summer, Ubisoft will start laying off people en masse if the plans are still what they've been holding up to for a while now. Because without Tencent's influx of cash, which by the way, let's talk about that real quick, Ubisoft is currently worth about $1 billion, which may sound like a lot, but for a company with somewhere in the 16,000 employee mark, we could pretty much guess that to keep those employees paid and kept at the company, Ubisoft likely has to pay somewhere between $100 to even $200 million at least to keep all of these developers employed. And when you're worth just $1 billion or so, that's just not really feasible to do, and it's no wonder that Tencent gave Ubisoft $1.1 billion in investments. Because Tencent is worth way more than that, so Ubisoft was basically given their entire value and then some by the sleeping giant that wants to eat them. And now that giant owns 25% of the company, and it's only a matter of time before they own all of it, man. And there's really no way this doesn't end with Tencent just owning them outright. I know Ubisoft's higher-ups are fighting tooth and nail to not let that happen, and it may take years, but it's inevitable unless they can somehow turn this all around. But when your biggest franchise sells just shy of 2 million units plus in like 2 months, yeah, you're gonna hit that panic button. Claire Obscure, by the way, that sold 2 million in under 1 week, and it was made by 30 to 50 people at most. Shadows took thousands of people to make that game. The credits alone for Shadows went viral for being like 2 hours long or something. To put it further into perspective for you to see how badly Shadows has actually went for Ubisoft despite the media lying to you, Ghost of Tsushima, which is basically what Assassin's Creed should have become, let's be real, that sold over 2 million copies on PS4 when it released in 2020 within 3 days of release, and Ghost was a PlayStation exclusive at the time, mind you, there was no PC or anything else to back it up. Assassin's Creed, I mean the very first game, which is 18 years old now, Jesus I'm old, that sold 2.5 million copies within its first month. And that was a lot back then because obviously the industry was much smaller, compared to now, but allegedly based on what was said online. But I can't confirm if it's real, so that's why I'm going to say allegedly, but the previous Assassin's Creed game Mirage sold about 5 million copies in 3 months. Again, allegedly. And if that's true, that is genuinely pathetic when you compare the paltry 2 million or so that Shadows is able to do, when it is also multiple times bigger and more expensive to make than Mirage was. And Screen Rant had an article all the way back in 2021, as you can see here, where they said that Valhalla led to the highest sales for the series at Ubisoft ever. To add further proof to how much better previous Assassin's Creed titles did compared to what Shadows did, later on in Screen Rant's article, they say here, which you can see, that Assassin's Creed 3 was able to cross 12 million units sold in just 2 months. So compare that to Shadows, which sold 2 million in the same time frame. You don't need to be a genius to understand which did better here, but this is how damaged this brand is now. It's kind of like Star Wars or Marvel right now. Once these brands are this banged up, it's hard to fix them unless real work is done to tidy up their image. But when that apathy sinks in, good luck is all I gotta say. Oh yeah, let me tell you some of the things one of my insiders at Ubisoft told me recently too. So, one of the things I was told by my insider is that they were told, based on how things are going on inside at Ubisoft, that Tencent plans to take over the company completely by 2027. This has been a big thing that Ubisoft is trying to prevent themselves, but the way things are going, it's something they can't seem to shake off. I was also told around 2 directors have already been fired from Ubisoft, and they're already having been laying off people quietly, but mostly on the IT side. Apparently, Ubisoft wanted more layoffs in IT, but from what I'm told, the people in charge of that department weren't able to lay off more people just yet because they need those workers right now, otherwise their operations will take a massive hit. So pretty much, these IT workers are now being treated like pigs in a slaughterhouse right now. And they're keeping them until they get a bit more fat and juicy before they take their one-way trip to being harvested, pretty much. I'm also told that the politics at Ubisoft are still very much left-leaning and that many of the people higher up in the company are still hell-bent on erasing any form of conservative values within Ubisoft. Still ridiculous that they're still on about that, but hey, that is what I'm being told. And this is for my Canadian viewers, but I'm also told that a lot of the higher-ups at Ubisoft hate Danielle Smith. And for anyone who isn't Canadian, basically these Canadian employees hate the Premier of Alberta, who's a hardcore conservative. So there's a lot of bitter people at Ubisoft over politics, I know, it's all so tiresome. I was also told from that same source that because Ubisoft can't afford to get rid of more IT workers yet, so instead they're now looking at the game production side to instead reduce costs by laying off more people to save them money that way. Don't know yet which parts of game production they want to reduce as of yet, but as I said before, the rumor that is circling is that big layoffs are coming at the beginning of summer, so that's about June-ish in Canada, or middle, so July 2025 even. I was also told by the source that yeah, Shadows is not selling well, and the collective thoughts of the higher-ups is that the reason why Shadows didn't do well is because it was a game that was made for everyone instead of being made for Assassin's Creed fans first. And that by broadening the game too much, it ended up being made for nobody, and as someone who reviewed that game on this channel, yep, I agree on that one. There is also a code of conduct at Ubisoft to avoid talking about politics, but as my source tells me, nobody seems to really listen to that rule. And that politics absolutely still influence every single part of the games that they are making currently. And that also that new entity under Ubisoft is being called as of now Nova. And that this new Ubisoft, if you wanted a name for it, will be housing Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, and more. The idea is that Nova will be this new Ubisoft. I don't know if that's the name they pick, that it sounds pretty generic, honestly. And it's probably already in use, but the idea is to splinter Ubisoft so that Nova is their premier gaming section instead. And the whole IT stuff and whatnot will be something else. The idea, as I'm told with Nova, is that the Guillemot family are doing this so that they have more control on what they deem to be the most important parts of Ubisoft's portfolio, so that they have control over it more easily in the future. And finally, I was told by my source that internally employees are pissed about how poorly the stocks have been going for Ubisoft, since many of the employees there actually own the stocks in the company themselves. As you can see here, which has been shared publicly, Ubisoft lost another 19% in value recently too. And these are not the actions of a company doing well, no matter how the websites try to spin it, but that's what I was told about Ubisoft. Nova is their big future bet. I'm sure they'll change the name. Yeah, I know Nova means new, so I get why they're using it. Maybe Novasoft would be a better name at least, then it has some ties to Ubisoft somewhat still, but I guess we'll see in the future. And like I said, websites are still running damage control. For an example, here's Push Square with their article titled, Assassin's Creed Shadows was such a hit, Ubisoft's delaying unannounced games. Yeah, no, it wasn't, guys. But I get it. You need the free access in the future, but no, it wasn't. Like, listen to the cope they said in this article. By all accounts, the extra development time certainly helped. No, but anyway. But having now reaped the benefits of launching a well-received product, Ubisoft has delayed a number of unannounced titles which are currently in the works. Well-received? Shadows? What are they talking about? That game was not received well at all. God, I hate how Access Media just conveniently forgets about the past whenever it doesn't cater to their stories like this. Ubisoft could kill someone, but pay these types and they'll unironically say, what do you mean Ubisoft kills someone? No, they didn't. It's revisionism, man, and it's really gross to see. But here's more of what Ubisoft said in their cope. After a thorough review of its pipeline that took place from October to December, the group decided to provide additional development time to some of its biggest productions in order to create the best conditions for success. The only other big game Ubisoft currently has coming is the next Far Cry game, which I talked about in other videos already. To catch you up quickly, it's set on some island, you have to save your family from being kidnapped by some shady group of people, and originally that new Far Cry game was going to star a single female protagonist who was basically John McClane from Die Hard, but they pivoted and now the main character is a male. Besides that, the only other hit I can think of maybe is that Splinter Cell remake, but we know that one has been confirmed to being made for the modern audience, so I guess you're likely going to get a super sanitized version of that game. Unless Ubisoft throws away their stupid in their brains and just remakes it as it is, but I doubt it. It's also funny though, because you have outlets like France 24 with articles like this one titled Assassin's Creed No Savior for Struggling Ubisoft, a bumper release for the latest Assassin's Creed installment, did not save French video game giant Ubisoft from falling back into the red in its 2024-25 financial year, the company said on Wednesday. Again, you see what I mean? If you just read that Push Square article, you would think, oh wow, Shadows must have sold 10 million copies and owned the chuds. And then in actuality is France 24, which literally says, as Ubisoft told them, as it says right here, Ubisoft lost $178 million in profit and dropped another 17.5% year over year. Does this look like a company that owned the chuds to you? Because it doesn't to me. It looks like a company that is slapping every button on the dashboard in a panic for a lifeline instead. As seen here, they explain how Star Wars Outlaws underperformed, X-Defiant got cooked, and even their CEO, Yves Guillemot, admitted that they got cooked and the competition of other better games did them no favors, and yeah, that's one way to put it. Also, as seen on screen here, Ubisoft's spin-off of their franchise will be employing around 3,000 people of their 17,000. Jesus, I thought it was 16,000 employees. Okay, it's even more now. But those 3,000 employees will be working on that new spin-off company with those games. That's the Nova group I was talking about earlier, by the way, so they're likely taking their more experienced devs and then moving them to what they hope will be their next big winners. But interesting how it says this Nova won't own the IPs but will pay royalties to the owners, which is Ubisoft. So it is what I theorized then, that Nova, or whatever they end up calling it, isn't just a spin-off of Ubisoft, but a legit way for Ubisoft to license their franchise out if possible too. It would actually be a good idea, cause an Assassin's Creed game made by anyone but Ubisoft would likely be amazing. And I would wager the way that Nova's gonna work will allow Tencent, of course, to have their devs make games within these franchises without Ubisoft's employees really being a part of it. A Chinese-made Assassin's Creed game will likely be crazy good too, and will probably, if that happens, lead to Tencent gaining even more control if reception and sales of said game ends up blowing anything that Ubisoft has done out of the water. And like I said about Tencent buying Ubisoft, yeah, look here, which reads in that same France 24 article, if Ubisoft is unable to use the money Tencent invested in a meaningful way, it is certainly possible that Tencent pursues buying the firm outright. And I guarantee you, that was their goal all along anyways. Because Tencent owning all of Ubisoft's core IPs would open the floodgates for Tencent to make content in the future, obviously. And never mind Assassin's Creed, new Ghost Recons, and more, they could take all of these IPs with their teams of literal thousands of Chinese devs, and they could just make new games on pretty much every single IP and then some at less cost and probably better quality too. This is why I keep saying that the West needs to smarten up when it comes to making games, because if they don't, China is just going to own everything. And then when that happens, none of these companies' politics or trans visibility days or whatever else will just exist anymore. Because China will just buy you, farm you, and heavily monetize whatever they want, and you really won't be able to escape it. Ubisoft had their window that they had, which was like 20 years or so, to make themselves unpenetrable, but instead greed and ideology ruined their entire empire from within. And only now, when the throne is too hot to sit on and the drapes covering the windows are engulfed in flames, do they finally think, you know what? Maybe we should start making things people actually want. Gee, Ubisoft, what a novel idea. Shame you didn't think about that before you were dying like this. Also, speaking of repeating mistakes, Insider Gaming also reported this, which reads, Yves Guillemot's son Charlie Guillemot is returning to Ubisoft. So the founder of Ubisoft's son is returning to the company. Is this a good thing? Well, let's get into that now too. So this Charlie Guillemot guy, he left Ubisoft in 2021 and is now returning to a sinking ship pretty much. And Charlie will be rejoining Ubisoft to lead the transformation committee alongside Marie-Sophie de Wolbert at Ubisoft. And the goal of this committee, as seen here, is to guide the future of Ubisoft for the next 100 days, or 3 months basically, but it's not going over well internally, as Insider Gaming says here. It's a move that has been met with criticism from employees who tell Insider Gaming that the majority of the members within the committee are the ones responsible for Ubisoft's current state. Of course it is. It's always like this with Ubisoft, dude. The very people responsible for crashing the Titanic are now in charge of the next ship that they will inevitably crash into another iceberg before long. Ubisoft is just full of people who failed upwards based on who they know. Obviously, that's so obvious. My god, dude. And instead of just getting people as in new blood to help them, instead let's get Charlie Guillemot, our savior, who's also the Nepo baby son of the founder, who in the past, as Insider Gaming again says here, however, within the company, Charlie was also heavily criticized for being responsible for one of Ubisoft's controversies in 2020, where the company used Black Lives Matter imagery in association with an in-game terrorist organization for the mobile game Elite Squad. In the internal email sent to staff, it was said that Charlie Guillemot takes full responsibility for the oversight. Yeah, then he left, like I said, in 2021. I'm sure that was a part of it too. And for most people, making Black Lives Matter of all things into a terrorist organization during a time in your video game, which by the way was when all the DEI stuff was exploding and a year after George Floyd died, no less, that would be grounds for the industry to probably blacklist that person entirely, but not Ubisoft. Oh no, instead, you just leave, and then your dad brings you back a few years later, hoping that people forget conveniently, to now lead and shape the same company your dad and his yes men ruined for years instead. You see what I mean? Nothing is truly changing with Ubisoft. They're the epitome of not being able to teach an old dog new tricks pretty much. These people are only being kept employed and able because Tencent, who pretty much just wants to eat them and then throw away the bones, gave them enough money to survive for now. And in their infinite wisdom, their foolproof plan is to not rehire not one, but multiple people to lead the company's future business prospects. The same people who led you into the abyss that you're currently in. This is like getting bit by an animal, and instead of never touching that animal again, you decide to put your hand in its mouth again because, it surely can't happen twice, can it? I think ultimately all of this will not go over well, and Ubisoft is clearly pushing the panic button until it breaks here, and that none of this is really going to work for them because Tencent will just own them before long. As I said internally, Tencent wants to wrestle control by 2027 at the earliest. That's only 2 years, guys. That's not even enough time for Ubisoft to even make or release another full Assassin's Creed game by then. Unless maybe Hex somehow gets fast-tracked, but I doubt it. Insider Gaming even says this after the whole Charlie thing, which reads, "So far, Ubisoft's employees have been left fairly in the dark about what the new subsidiary actually means. With Yves Guillemot himself saying in an internal memo that there's not really a plan for the future as we need to take the time to figure this out." Oh, wonderful. Whole company with 17,000 employees led by incompetent people who both don't know what to do, but instead are bringing in more yes men to make financial decisions that will, if they go wrong, just end up destroying one of the core companies of Western gaming and cause one of the biggest mass layoffs in gaming history, if their foolproof future plan doesn't end up working, which it probably won't, let's be honest. And can you imagine what the industry will say or look like if suddenly 17,000 developers got laid off due to all of this? Dude, that's enough devs to make over 100 Witcher 3-like games, and then some being laid off at once. Now imagine all of those people scurrying to now join new companies and studios, or the brain drain, as the more seasoned talent just leaves the industry, finally just sick of the idiocy of management at the very top. But don't worry guys, what happens either way, Yves and his son Charlie will have golden parachutes either way. They'll just float away into the sunset holding hands with millions as thousands of the game developers are just left to pick up the pieces of their lives because the people at the top who got them into that mess already once have decided to do it yet again by continuing to keep destroying the very thing they caused in the first place. I'll keep my ear to the ground, but it's not looking good guys, but for now, thanks for watching, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.